Welcome to Breaking Bulletin, the channel where news meets insight and history meets speculation. If you're passionate about geopolitics, discovery, and deep analysis, you're in the right place. Before we begin, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support fuels our mission to explore the world one bold idea at a time. Today, we ask a question you've probably never heard before. What if Canada annexed the United States instead of the other way around? It's a reversal of traditional thinking, a concept that seems impossible on the surface. But dig deeper, and it becomes an intriguing scenario full of economic, cultural, and geopolitical questions. Let's dive in. To fully understand this scenario, we need to explore the historical relationship between Canada and the United States. Canada became a self-governing dominion of the British Empire in 1867. Though it shares the world's longest undefended border with the United States, its development followed a very different trajectory. The U.S. achieved independence through revolution. Canada, by contrast, moved gradually toward autonomy under British oversight. Throughout the 19th century, tensions simmered between the two countries. American expansionism, as seen in the Monroe Doctrine and Manifest Destiny, led many to assume that Canada might one day become part of the United States. But despite proximity and economic integration, Canada remained independent. It built its institutions, fostered a multicultural society, and embraced a parliamentary democracy distinct from America's constitutional republic. So the idea of Canada annexing the United States, while historically unthinkably, is a fascinating reversal of assumptions that have lingered for centuries. So what would happen if Canada annexed the United States? It would redefine history. It would create a new global superstate. It would challenge everything we know about sovereignty, democracy, and culture. But maybe, just maybe, it would offer a bold path forward. Now we want to hear from you. Could Canada annexing the U.S. ever happen? Would it be a utopia, a disaster? What would you want from a Canadella North America? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more bold insights from Breaking Bulletin. Until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and stay bold. Throughout modern history, the United States has held the position of global superpower. Its military might, cultural influence, and economic scale have shaped international relations for over a century. In contrast, Canada has often been viewed as the quieter neighbor to the north, peaceful, cooperative, and politically stable. But what if the tables were turned? What if Canada, through an extraordinary convergence of events, annexed the United States? To answer that, we must think beyond traditional assumptions and explore the evolution of soft power. Canada's strength has always been in diplomacy, consensus building, and long-term vision. Over time, those qualities could become more desirable than raw power, especially in a world facing climate change, inequality, and digital threats. Imagine a scenario in which the United States experiences prolonged political instability. Rising polarization leads to deadlock in Congress. Federal agencies lose public trust. Major states begin demanding more autonomy, perhaps even secession. In such a moment of internal crisis, the concept of merging with a stable, functional neighbor like Canada might not seem so outlandish. Canada's government, with its centralized healthcare, strict gun laws, and parliamentary system, may appeal to millions of disillusioned Americans. Rather than a traditional annexation, the U.S. might apply to join Canada, much like provinces forming a federation. The term annexation typically conjures images of tanks and forced occupation. But what if annexation came through consensus? It's through bilateral treaties, phased integration, and voluntary unification. This kind of soft annexation would be more like a political evolution than an invasion. The United States, in this thought experiment, becomes part of a reimagined Canada, one built on shared interests and negotiated rights. Just as East and West Germany reunified through treaty, North America might one day integrate under Canadian leadership, with former U.S. states becoming autonomous regions within a greater Canadian federation. What would Americans gain from becoming part of Canada? One major benefit would be access to universal health care. Canadians spend less per capita on health care and enjoy better outcomes across many metrics. Public universities in Canada are also more affordable, and students carry less debt. Gun laws would likely tighten, bringing changes to public safety and crime rates. Climate policy would shift dramatically, as Canada has stronger commitments to environmental sustainability. Public services such as childcare, maternity leave, and transit would see major improvements. The quality of life in many regions could rise substantially. Canadians would also see changes, both challenges and benefits. On one hand, they'd gain access to the U.S. economy, the largest in the world. They'd gain representation in former American territories, including economic hubs like California, Texas, and New York. Culturally, Canadians would influence global media more directly. On the other hand, Canadians might worry about losing their identity. Would Canadian values survive the political and cultural absorption of 330 million Americans? Would bilingualism persist? Would Parliament remain functional? These are valid concerns, but so are the possibilities of shared prosperity and democratic evolution. A Canada-led North America would be the largest democracy on Earth. It would span 6 time zones, possess Arctic sovereignty, and dominate global trade routes. Its combined GDP would rival that of the entire European Union. The North American Parliament might include delegates from all provinces and states. With Indigenous nations holding formal voting power, such a nation could invest heavily in green energy, advanced infrastructure, and post-carbon urban design. Imagine a new capital city, perhaps in Manitoba or Michigan, built as a model of environmental and architectural brilliance. Could this North American Federation lead the world into a new age of cooperation? What happened in NATO, the United Nations, and other global alliances? The new North America would likely retain Canada's foreign policy, DNA, peacekeeping, multilateralism, and diplomacy first approaches. This could cool tensions with nations like Iran, China, or Russia, opening paths to new negotiations. The combined diplomatic corps would be formidable. North America would still be a military power, but it might shift focus from interventionism to stability missions. It could lead the world in humanitarian aid, cyber defense, and climate diplomacy. Would that be a welcome change, or would it disrupt decades of established alliances? Integrating to nations isn't just a matter of politics and economics, it's about identity. Americans are used to a 2-party system, a written constitution, and a Bill of Rights. Canadians rely on unwritten conventions, party discipline, and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Both countries prize freedom, but define it differently. In a unified North America, new symbols would be needed. A new flag, a new anthem, new national holidays, and heroes. School curricula would blend, media would evolve. Perhaps a new language emerges, part French, part English, part Spanish. It would be the birth of a truly North American identity. One of the biggest hurdles would be leadership. Would a Canadian Prime Minister lead the new federation? Would American politicians be folded into the existing Canadian system? Or would both countries dissolve their leadership structures and elect a new North American chancellor? The mechanics of power sharing would be complex. Senate seats, electoral districts, and cabinet roles would all need rebalancing. The transition would likely take a decade or more, but if done transparently and inclusively, it could result in a more accountable and diverse political system. No conversation about North American unification is complete without including Indigenous voices. Both Canada and the United States are built on lands that were once stewarded by Indigenous nations. In a world where Canada annexes the U.S., Indigenous representation would need to become central to governance. Indigenous governments could gain constitutional authority and autonomous recognition within the North American Federation. Treaty obligations, land claims, and cultural preservation efforts could finally receive binding international respect. Imagine a shared parliament where Indigenous representatives vote as equals, shaping the direction of policy on education, climate, and heritage. This wouldn't just be annexation, it could be reconciliation. Technological integration would be a massive part of this transition. Canada leads in clean tech, artificial intelligence research, and quantum computing. The United States is dominant in defense technology, commercial software, and semiconductors. Together, the two could form a scientific alliance unmatched by any other. Superhighways of innovation could be built across the continents, spanning clean energy grids, high-speed rail, and digital infrastructure. Silicon Valley could be twinned with Toronto's Mars Innovation Hub. Universities could pool research funding into continental breakthroughs. What once were national tech clusters would become engines of global change. Sports and entertainment would also evolve. Would the NFL and CFL merge into a new league? Would Hockey Canada's passion expand even deeper into the American South? Cultural exports from Hollywood and Quebec cinema might mix in new and surprising ways. What would a shared streaming service look like? North American Netflix with bilingual and trilingual content? Music, literature, and the arts would undergo a renaissance fueled by collaboration and audience reach. Festivals like Toronto's TIFF could partner with Sundance to create a mega North American cultural summit. Merging the education systems of two nations would be daunting but potentially transformative. Canada's education system is provincially managed, while the U.S. system is highly decentralized. Both nations face issues of inequality and access, but they also offer powerful models to learn from each other. Canada's commitment to early childhood education and affordable post-secondary schooling could benefit Americans. Meanwhile, American universities could provide Canadian students with more access to elite research institutions. A unified education council might work to standardize credentials, support cross-border academic mobility, and tackle brain drain collectively. This could unleash the full potential of the continent's intellectual capital. Law enforcement, criminal justice, and civil rights would require serious reform in a merged system. Policing models vary widely between Canadian provinces and U.S. states. While Canada emphasizes community policing and de-escalation, the U.S. faces widespread calls for reform. A North American Charter of Civil Liberties might be created, merging the Canadian Charter and the American Bill of Rights. This new document could offer protections for speech, identity, safety, and data privacy. It could also redefine justice, prioritizing rehabilitation over punishment and equality over precedent. One of the greatest advantages of a Canada-led annexation of the U.S. would be an environmental policy. Canada is a signatory to the Paris Agreement and has long promoted climate science. The U.S., however, has fluctuated in its commitment depending on the administration in power. A unified North American government led by Canadian policy thinkers could drive historic climate action. Massive carbon pricing programs, investment in clean transit, reforestation, and water conservation could all be executed continentally. Imagine a coast-to-coast electric vehicle network powered by renewable energy. A nation capable of defending both the Arctic and the Everglades. From the standpoint of global influence, the new North American Federation would dominate the world stage not just through military or economic force, but through soft power. A new style of global leadership would emerge, democratic, inclusive, and humanitarian. Foreign aid programs would multiply. Peacekeeping missions would increase. Climate diplomacy would replace fossil fuel dependency. And with over 500 million citizens, this new nation would be a beacon for global migration, innovation, and human rights. Identity is a powerful thing. And annexation isn't just about policy, it's about emotion, symbolism, and history. Would Americans be willing to change their flag? Would Canadians be willing to double their population overnight? These are not small questions, but perhaps identity itself is evolving. In a globalized, digitized world, national identity may become less about borders and more about shared values. The new North America could represent a future where liberty and equality are not just ideals, but realities. A future where nationalism makes way for cooperation. Unifying the intelligence agencies of Canada and the United States would be a monumental task. The U.S. intelligence community includes the CIA, NSA, FBI, and over a dozen other specialized branches. Canada has CSIS and CSE, much smaller but effective in cyber defense and counterterrorism. In a unified North America, intelligence operations could become more efficient, with better data sharing and joint threat assessments. But it would also raise serious concerns about surveillance overreach and civil liberties. How do you balance national security with personal freedom in a megastate? A new oversight model would be required, one built with transparency, checks and balances, and public trust at its core. The cultural and religious landscape of a Canada-annexed U.S. would be the most diverse in the world. From Muslim communities in Michigan to Buddhist enclaves in British Columbia, every faith would need equal protection under law. This would demand constitutional commitment to multiculturalism, something Canada already embraces. Laws against religious discrimination could be reinforced and adapted across former American states. Regional identities would flourish. Texas would still be Texas, and Quebec would still be Quebec. But a shared constitution could emphasize coexistence, respect, and interfaith dialogue as national values. Diversity would not be tolerated, it would be celebrated. Annexation, even under peaceful terms, is not without risks. Economic inequality could widen before narrowing. Transition periods could destabilize local economies. Misinformation campaigns could fuel civil unrest. Some regions might resist integration altogether. Military bases would need new command structures. Social services would be strained by rapid scaling. Politically, opposition would arise from nationalists on both sides of the border. Any plan to unite two great nations must be gradual, inclusive, and deeply democratic. Eventually, the new nation would need a constitution, a true fusion of American innovation and Canadian pragmatism, could guarantee universal health care and free speech, could enshrine climate action and digital privacy, could build the most advanced democratic system ever seen. And from this platform, North America could redefine what it means to be a world leader, not just through GDP or firepower, but through ethics, vision, and unity. Could this be humanity's next great experiment, the dawn of a super democracy?